They erased me. Cleanly. It wasn't even a shock, seeing the framed family picture hanging there, my own face completely missing. Honestly, it felt almost inevitable. Nobody said a word about it on Thanksgiving Eve. The next morning, I slipped an envelope into my parents' hands. "Don't open this now," I murmured. They tore it open right there. My mother's face crumpled. My dad turned ghost white. I wish I could say I was stunned when I first saw it. I wish it had been some big reveal, a shocking plot twist. But deep down, GT felt strangely right. I walked into the Thompsons' family room, shaking the rain off my coat, glanced up, and there it was, the photograph. Big, glossy, expensively framed, hung deliberately over the mantelpiece like the ultimate symbol of their perfect family story. They were all there. Mrs. Thompson, my mom, in her favorite blue cardigan, smiling like she hadn't spent the last 20 years sighing over anything that didn't involve my sister Emily. Mr. Thompson, my dad, flashing that stiff grin he reserves for pose photos and company golf outings. And Emily, naturally, right in the middle, wearing some silk scarf that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. She had that fake, caught laughing look she perfects, probably giggling about something charming, like a joke about her travel fund. And then there was absence. Not even a blurry shoulder at the edge, just empty space where I should have been. The cropping job was neat, purposeful, tidy, like I'd been digitally snipped from their lives with maximum efficiency. No ragged edges, no trace left behind, just deleted. I stared for maybe 6 seconds, 7 tops, long enough for my stomach to twist, but not long enough for anyone to really see me seeing it. Or maybe they saw and just didn't react. "Supper's nearly on the table," Mom called from the kitchen, her voice radiating false cheer, like we were all just one cozy unit. I could smell thyme and garlic from the chicken she was roasting. Holiday scents. Comfort scents. I used to find comfort in those smells, back when they felt genuine. I hung my coat, offered a brief hello, and went into the kitchen. Emily was there, swirling red wine in a huge glass like she was filming a segment on food pairings. She gave me one of those air kisses, close enough to count, far enough to avoid actual contact. "You made it," she chirped, as if I were a guest running late to her private event. I didn't answer, just offered the kind of tight smile you manage after you've already yelled into your couch cushions twice that week and decided saving your breath was more important. Dinner was the usual stage play. My dad carved the chicken like he was practicing for a cozy cable movie. My mom complimented Emily's hair 3 times. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody wondered what my life was like, or where I was even living these days. The only question directed at me was if I still drove that old sedan, which was their code for, "We know nothing about your life. Please fill us in so we can pretend to care." I didn't fill them in. Instead, I watched Emily open a small box from Mom and Dad, a delicate silver bracelet. "Just a little something," Mom murmured, which was comical because I glimpsed the price tag tucked under the ribbon. Let's just say it would take me 2 weeks of work to afford it, assuming I ate ramen noodles every night. "Oh, wow, you guys," Emily gushed. "This is just incredible." "Knew you'd love it," Dad said, beaming like he just closed a major deal. Meanwhile, my gift was a coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Daughter." I'm guessing it was meant ironically. Or maybe not. Hard to know with them. I excused myself after the pie, claiming I was tired. Mom pointed toward the spare room. Not my room, not your old room. Just the spare room. Plain beige bedding, a dusty shelf of forgotten paperbacks, a single lamp that buzzed faintly if you stood too near it. I closed the door, switched on the lamp, it buzzed, and sat on the edge of the stiff mattress. That's when I took out the envelope. It had been in my purse the entire time. Heavy cream paper, a formal seal. I'd considered giving it to them in the morning. After the leftovers, after the coffee, after the whole performance concluded. But standing in that family room, staring at that photograph, seeing myself meticulously airbrushed out like a mistake in their carefully crafted narrative, well, I'd changed my plan. They didn't just overlook me, they actively erased me. Methodically. Strategically. Like I was a failed product endorsement. I turned the weighty envelope over in my hands. That night, I lay in bed listening to the house settle. Same old creaking sounds from the hallway floor. Same ticking grandfather clock downstairs. My dad started snoring softly. I heard Mom's voice drift up once. Something about using the good china tomorrow. Emily let out one of her practiced airy laughs. The soundtrack of the golden child's life. I closed my eyes and thought about the years. The time I got accepted to my top choice university, and they said, "We're so proud." Then immediately asked if I could wait a year so they could help Emily prepare her art school applications. The time I was short on rent and called home, and Dad said, "Money's tight right now," while simultaneously planning a European trip for Emily's 19th birthday. The time I brought a boyfriend home, Ben, and they called him by the wrong name all evening. Ben never came back. I couldn't blame him. I was done telling myself I was just overly sensitive, done pretending I was misinterpreting things. That night, lying in a bed that should have felt like home, but felt alien, I stopped making excuses for them. Tomorrow I'd hand over the envelope. No shouting, no tears. I wouldn't even raise my voice. I'd just smile, wish them a happy Thanksgiving, and let the truth finally speak after years of my silence. I woke to the aroma of coffee and bacon and the faint sound of Emily's voice complaining about airline baggage fees and the hassles of modern travel. The irony was thick enough to slice. Naturally, since she wasn't the one footing the bill for her flights or her luggage, or the designer suitcase itself, or the expensive shoes packed inside it that cost more than my monthly car payment. But yes, truly taxing stuff. Thoughts and prayers. I lingered in the spare room longer than needed, not out of tiredness, but because I wasn't ready to step back onto the set of my family's holiday sitcom. I could already picture the forced smiles, the exaggerated cheerfulness, and someone, likely Mom, saying, "Isn't it wonderful having everyone together?" As if everyone actually included me, as if I hadn't spent the last decade feeling like an extra in every single family memory. When I finally went downstairs, my mother was arranging scrambled eggs on plates like she was styling a photo shoot for a food blog. My dad sat at the table, doom scrolling on his tablet. Emily stood nearby, barefoot, sipping oat milk from a fancy glass. "Morning," my mom chirped without looking up. "Hope you slept all right in the spare room." "The mattress has character," I replied, pouring myself some coffee. She laughed as if I'd made a joke. I hadn't. We survived breakfast through sheer force of habit, playing our parts. No real conversation. No one asked about my job, my well-being, or if I still lived in that tiny apartment with the noisy radiator, which, for the record, I didn't. Emily detailed her upcoming vacation, Florence this time, and remarked how fortunate she was to have parents who encouraged her passions. I said nothing, just nodded along like an understudy watching the lead perform. They still hadn't noticed the envelope resting in my coat pocket. That reveal would come later. Instead, my mind drifted back to all the moments leading here. When I finished high school, I earned a partial scholarship. Not a full ride, but enough to make college feasible if I worked part-time. I remember spreading the financial aid forms on the kitchen table, asking if they could help cover the gap, even just a little. My mom gave me a look like I'd asked to borrow her engagement ring to sell. Dad mumbled about difficult timing, and we're still paying off the kitchen renovation. The same renovation that included quartz countertops and a wine fridge. 2 months later, they funded Emily's trip to Europe for her 19th birthday. She posted photos constantly, thanking them for being the most supportive parents ever. I stood by the mailbox holding a $50 bill inside a graduation card that read, "Shoot for the stars." And guess what? I still went to college, juggled 3 jobs, ran on 4 hours of sleep, ate far too much instant soup, graduated with honors, moved to a different state, and started fresh. I never asked them for help again, and they never offered. When I got laid off 3 years ago, I didn't call them. When I got sick and couldn't afford the full course of antibiotics my doctor recommended, I didn't ask. When my apartment bathroom flooded and ruined the vanity, I found a cheap replacement on an online marketplace and managed. Meanwhile, Emily posted LifeShare stories from Bali, sponsored naturally. I used to wonder if it was my fault. Maybe I was just less lovable, quieter, not as bright and shiny. Maybe I should have joined a sorority, smiled more, worn more pastels. Maybe if I'd taken up pottery instead of working weekends at a coffee shop, they would have paid attention. Maybe if I hadn't made things so easy for them, always self-sufficient, always claiming I was fine, they might have noticed I needed support too. But then I remembered my 8th birthday. I'd invited 5 friends over, baked cupcakes myself. Mom forgot to order the pizza, so we ended up eating crackers with cheese spread. Emily had a ballet rehearsal the next day, so the party wrapped up early. They promised, "We'll make it up to you next year." They never did. Or the time I won a regional art award. My teacher called home to congratulate them. They sent me a text. "Great news, that was all. No celebration dinner, no framed certificate, no mention of it afterward. Emily got a call back for a local yogurt commercial, and they threw her a surprise party with streamers and a custom cake that said, "Our Rising Star." So no, it wasn't me. It had never been about me. The turning point came last winter. I wasn't actively looking for anything. I had visited the county registrar's office for something mundane, needing proof of residency for a background check. While waiting, a file listing caught my eye. A document linked to my name, associated with an address in Maple Creek I didn't recognize. Initially, I assumed it was an error, perhaps another Sarah Miller. But curiosity took hold. I started digging, making inquiries, running searches, sending a few cautious emails. The deeper I probed, the more convoluted the story became. There were details I'd never been told, truths that had been deliberately obscured, and right at the heart of it all, me. I didn't react immediately, didn't confront anyone. I just watched and listened the way I always had. Except this time, I wasn't powerless. I had documentation, hard evidence. And the more I uncovered, the clearer things became, bringing a strange sense of calm, like surfacing after holding your breath underwater for years without realizing it. They hadn't just forgotten about me, they had actively used me. My name, my inheritance rights, my trusting silence. But now I possessed something that would force them to finally listen. That morning after breakfast, I went upstairs to change. I took my time. Let them continue their ritual, gathering in the family room, exchanging gifts, soaking in their manufactured holiday warmth. When I came back down, they were already absorbed in unwrapping presents. Emily was gushing over something pricey, feigning surprise. My mom had that soft, teary-eyed expression she adopted for moments she could later document online. My dad looked up as I entered. "Did you get some rest?" I smiled faintly. "Enough." He nodded, then turned back to watch Emily admire her new leather tote bag. I sat down quietly, reached into my coat pocket, and placed the envelope on the coffee table next to the discarded wrapping paper and half-empty mugs. Nobody noticed. Not right away. But they would. They always notice eventually. Usually when it's far too late. They finally noticed the envelope about 15 minutes later. Or rather, my mom did, because heaven forbid something sit on her antique coffee table without proper placement or explanation. She picked it up cautiously, as if it might be junk mail or an unexpected bill. "What's this?" she asked, addressing the room more than me directly. I didn't look up immediately, just took another slow sip of coffee. "It's from me." My dad glanced over from where he was fiddling with a stray ribbon, probably checking if any small gifts had been overlooked. "You didn't need to get us anything, Sarah," he said, smiling as if I'd presented them with another kitschy mug. "I know," I replied softly, "but I wanted to." That captured their full attention. Mom settled back into her chair, turning the thick envelope over in her hands. "Should we open it now?" I shrugged nonchalantly. "You can, but I'd prefer you didn't." Naturally, they opened it immediately. Dad leaned over Mom's shoulder as she carefully broke the seal. For a few moments, the only sounds were the rustle of paper sliding free, the quiet unfolding of documents. I watched Emily meticulously arrange the straps of her new tote bag, handling it like a precious artifact named after an Italian landmark. Then the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick. I didn't need to look up. I could feel the change, that sickening lurch somewhere between dawning comprehension and pure dread. Like the instant you taste spoiled cream in your coffee just after you've taken a big gulp. My dad sucked in a sharp breath through his nose. My mom's eyes were scanning the pages faster now, flipping to the second sheet, then the third, as if trying to outpace the words she was reading. Emily looked from one parent to the other. What is it?" They remained silent. She tried again, her voice slightly louder. "What's going on?" Still nothing. That was my cue. "I thought it was time you knew," I said, rising slowly from my chair. "Happy Thanksgiving." "What is this?" my mom finally whispered. Her voice was thin, hollow. Not angry, not yet confused. Just empty. "That," I stated calmly, "is a copy of Grandpa Davis's will." She blinked rapidly. "I've seen his will. We settled the estate years ago." "No," I corrected her gently. "You handled what you claimed was the estate. You never showed me the complete will, just told me he left a few sentimental items and some money that supposedly covered funeral costs." My dad stared at me, his blinking accelerating. "That abbreviated version conveniently left out the rental property in Maple Creek," I continued. "Probably because you were already collecting income from it by that point." My dad let the papers fall onto the table as if they were suddenly hot. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, his voice tight. Oh, you know, I said airily. Public records, property title searches, county tax filings, archived bank statements, a few phone calls here and there, a very thorough lawyer. Emily finally stood up, bewildered. Wait, what rental property? The duplex near the Riverwalk, I turned to her. The one you used as a backdrop for that urban artist photo shoot last summer? Yes, that one. Her mouth fell open, but no sound emerged. My mom regained her voice, shifting into damage control mode. Honey, this isn't how it seems. I offered a small, humorless smile. Really? Because it seems like you used my name, my inheritance, and my legal standing to finance your lifestyle while assuring me there was nothing left for me. It wasn't like that, she insisted, her words tumbling out too fast. It was complex. It wasn't complex at all, I countered. The will is perfectly clear. The Maple Creek property was left solely to me. Full ownership transferred upon his death. Which means all the rent you've been pocketing all these years? That was technically theft. And those upgrades you made? Unauthorized expenditures. My dad rubbed his temples, acting like this conversation was inducing a headache. I hoped it was. I knew you wouldn't understand, he muttered. You always overreact. That elicited a short, sharp laugh from me. Right. I'm the one overreacting. You digitally removed me from a family portrait and commit inheritance fraud for years. But sure, let's focus on my tone. Emily looked genuinely lost now, like the ground had vanished beneath her feet and she was still falling. But that house paid for my study abroad program. I know, I affirmed. And the down payment on your car, and the trip to Mexico, and likely quite a few designer handbags along the way. That's not fair, she snapped suddenly. You didn't need the money. You were always the independent one. You never asked for help, Dad chimed in. Because I was explicitly told there was nothing to ask for, I shot back, my voice finally rising slightly. You made absolutely sure of that. My mom's voice softened, adopting the careful, persuasive tone she used when trying to return expensive items past the return date. We didn't think you'd want the burden, Sarah. You were so busy with your career. You were always so far away. I was far away, I stated plainly, because you consistently made it clear I wasn't truly welcome here. Dad pushed his chair back abruptly. You need to calm down. And you, I said, turning my gaze directly to him, need to consult an attorney. He froze mid-motion. I'm not filing a lawsuit, I added quickly. Not yet. But I have officially reclaimed title to the property. The tenants have been informed. Future rent payments will be directed to me. Your access to the property is hereby terminated. My mom looked like she was about to break down. But that house, that was our supplemental income. We relied on that, I tilted my head slightly. Then perhaps you shouldn't have stolen it from your daughter. We're family, she whispered, her voice trembling. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You're people I happen to be related to. There's a significant difference. Emily crossed her arms defensively. You think doing this makes you better than us? No, I replied honestly. Just not beneath you any longer. The silence that descended wasn't calm. It was thick, charged, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring slightly. Nobody moved. Nobody seemed to breathe. My dad stared at the envelope on the table as if it were a ticking bomb. My mom's face was slack with shock. Emily looked like she was waiting for someone to shake her awake from a bad dream. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Wait, my mom pleaded, standing up. Can't we please just talk about this? You just did, I said evenly. For years, every time you made a choice without consulting me, every time you excluded me, every time you told me I'd understand when I was older, Dad's jaw was clenched tight. If you walk out that door now, don't even think about coming back. I paused at the doorway, turning to look at them one last time. My mother near tears, my father rigid with anger, my sister utterly adrift. I believe that's the first thing we've ever truly agreed on. And then I walked out. The air outside was crisp, cool, and blessedly clean. It filled my lungs, a sharp reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still real. I got into my car, turned the key, listened to the engine hum steadily, and drove away. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't crack a smile. I just breathed. Because sometimes the most powerful statement is silence. And sometimes the loudest form of self-respect is simply walking away. About a month passed before the first attempt at contact. It was a text from my mom. Brief, carefully worded, polished, smooth like she'd drafted it multiple times. Hi, Sarah. We've been discussing things and feel there's been a significant misunderstanding. Could we chat sometime this week? Hope you are doing well. Love you. No punctuation after love you. Just the words hanging there. Ill-fitting and awkward. I didn't reply. A few days later, another text arrived. Please don't let this situation destroy our family. Emily is extremely upset. Dad is trying to remain composed, but you know how he gets when he feels ambushed. Ah, yes, when he feels ambushed. Not when he orchestrates fraud. Not when he deceives his own daughter for years. No, the focus was on his feelings of being blindsided. Poor man. Again, I said nothing. Then came a voicemail from my dad. I didn't bother listening to it. I just saw the notification, pressed delete, and moved on. The last time he'd called me kiddo was when I offered to help him sort out his investment portfolio, and he'd condescendingly replied, "Let's leave the financial strategies to those who really grasp them." Right, like himself. Next was an email from Emily. Do you really think this makes you the winner? Fine, keep the stupid house, but don't come crawling back when you figure out money can buy you a family. This was followed by another message a day later. Mom and Dad are incredibly stressed. They're talking about having to sell their condo. Is this what you wanted? Hope you're happy. I read that second one twice, not from guilt, but to fully absorb the extent to which reclaiming my property was dismantling their financial house of cards. It turned out the Maple Creek house had been propping up their entire lifestyle. Rent from the 2 units covered their mortgage payments, their annual vacations, a significant portion of Emily's living expenses, and apparently even some cosmetic procedures my mom had always attributed to excellent hydration and genetics. When I took back what was rightfully mine, the whole precarious structure began to wobble, and I hadn't even begun inquiring about the years of back rent they owed me. Not yet. By summer, I started hearing things through the grapevine. A former neighbor mentioned my parents were attempting to refinance their condo. Someone else heard my dad had started doing freelance advising, which I translated as desperately calling old business contacts, hoping someone felt obligated to throw him some work. My mom took a part-time job on weekends at a gallery downtown, the kind of place she used to browse for expensive art. Now she was wrapping ceramics for wealthy tourists and probably telling herself it was just temporary. And Emily? She had moved back home. Her city apartment became unaffordable, her freelance design clients mysteriously disappeared, and her design group had either dissolved or imploded. The details were murky, and honestly, I wasn't invested. The crowd-funded campaign she launched for a bold new artistic venture raised a meager $95. 5 of those dollars came from my ex, Ben. I don't know why that specific detail made me chuckle, but it did. Meanwhile, I started fixing up the house. My house. It was dusty when I first took possession, clearly neglected in places, but structurally sound. I hired a local contractor to repaint the exterior trim and replace some drafty old windows. I cleared out the random furniture my parents had stored in the basement and donated almost all of it. I kept only one piece, a comfortable navy blue armchair I vaguely recalled from childhood visits to Grandpa Davis's study, the only item that didn't feel tainted by their deception. The tenants were lovely people. One of them slipped a thank you card under my door after I lowered her rent by $75 a month, writing that I was the first landlord who had ever treated her with basic respect. That simple gesture meant more than any of my parents' hollow apologies ever could. It's strange, the clarity that emerges when the background noise finally fades. The silence, which once felt heavy with unspoken resentment, transformed into peaceful spaciousness. Room to breathe, to exist on my own terms. I stopped compulsively checking my phone for their messages. I stopped bracing myself for the inevitable guilt trips. I started sleeping soundly through the night again. And then one afternoon, mixed in with the usual bills and junk mail, I found a letter. Not an email, not a text message. An actual handwritten letter. My mom's familiar script on the envelope. I held it for a long moment before opening it. Not because I anticipated sincerity, but because I wanted to acknowledge the significance of this outdated form of communication. The paper smelled faintly of her signature perfume. Inside were 2 pages, written in neat cursive, filled with familiar refrains. We didn't understand. It was never our intention, and we only ever wanted what was best for everyone. My personal favorite line was, "You've always been so capable and strong. We never realized you needed anything from us." That's the classic excuse people use when they've benefited from your resilience, and need a justification for never bothering to ask why you grew so quiet. She ended with, "We hope someday you'll consider coming home. Maybe we can find a way to start over. Maybe we can be a family again." There was no mention of restitution, no acknowledgement of the stolen income, the years of lies, or the fact that I'd been literally cropped out of their family portrait like an embarrassing mistake. I slipped the letter into a desk drawer. I didn't discard it, but I didn't reply either. That was the last time she tried to contact me directly. 4 years later, I ran into my old neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, at a local coffee shop. She asked if I was still managing the Maple Creek property, and I smiled, confirming I was. She hesitated briefly before adding quietly, "I heard your parents went through a rather difficult period." I offered a neutral nod, saying nothing. She studied my face for a second. "Well, you look genuinely happy, Sarah. That's wonderful to see." And I was. "I am," I replied, meaning it completely. "I still live in the house now. Not because I have to, not out of lingering spite, but because it feels right. It's peaceful here. It's mine. I wake up to the sound of birds and sunlight streaming through the windows, instead of tense footsteps outside my bedroom door and passive-aggressive comments about my lack of communication. I replanted the patio garden, painted the front door a cheerful blue. My windowsills are lined with houseplants that thrive with minimal fuss. There's a photograph displayed on my mantelpiece now. Just me, standing proudly in front of the house, holding the keys. Nobody else is in the picture. It's my favorite photo. No cropping required. I still hear about them indirectly sometimes. A forwarded family newsletter, a relayed message through a distant cousin, once a generic holiday card simply signed, "Thinking of you. Hope you are well." No return address was included. I never respond. And the surprising thing is, the anger's gone. I'm not holding my breath waiting for closure, or perfect justice, or even a heartfelt apology. I already secured what they consistently withheld. My name legally tied to something tangible. My own space in the world. The authorship of my own story. I used to believe that if I just worked harder, achieved more, maybe someday they'd finally love me the way they so effortlessly loved Emily. But real love, the kind that truly sustains you, isn't something you should have to earn through endless striving. It's supposed to be given freely, unconditionally. What they offered me always came with strings attached. What I finally gave myself was liberation. So no, I don't miss them. I don't waste time replaying old arguments in my head. I don't fantasize about dramatic reconciliations. I don't long for some cinematic apology scene that magically erases the past. I already rectified the situation myself. The life I have now wasn't handed to me with a fancy bow or their blessing. It came from making the incredibly difficult choice to walk away from a narrative that never valued me. And that act of reclaiming myself, as it turned out, was the only inheritance I ever truly needed.